Okay, welcome back. It's Mr. Reed coming at you live. I hope you had a wonderful break, feeling well rested. Today we're going to talk about our next unit, The Interpretive Maladies by Jahanpa Lahiri. And we're going to just quickly talk about some of the big picture ideas and then get right into the primary focus of this unit and where we're headed moving into our final exam. So, first things first, we have our big idea. So, generations removed from colonialism, Asian writers have become prolific contributors to English literary canon. And this is an opportunity for you guys to start interacting with some of the concepts that you're going to be dealing with in both the IB Language and Literature course and then also the IB Literature course, depending on which course you end up taking. Essential questions: to what extent can literature be a vehicle for change, and how does literature develop its personal connections? Right, so we're going to be talking a lot about the individual, this idea of identity, culture, representation, a couple other big concepts. Formative tasks, this is going to be a reader's workshop model and also a writer's workshop model. If you don't know what that is, just for those of you who have been at Brent for a while, you did that in 8th grade, and I believe you did in 7th grade as well. If you're new to it, we're going to talk about it next class, so no worries there, all right? The IB concepts, right? So there are 7 in total. We are going to do our best to get through all 7 of them the next couple of weeks. And this is going to be an opportunity for you to start exploring and using those concepts to make some new meaning. And this is going to be an opportunity for me to just kind of have some quick conversations with you using the Readers and Writers Workshop model to see kind of where you guys are at with these concepts. But these concepts are there's quite a lot of variety to them, and we use them as a tool to make and shape meaning of a text. So again, big picture stuff. We're going to break this down over the next couple of classes here, so no worries about that. Over the next 3 weeks, we're going to be reading 2 short stories from a short story collection called The Interpretive Maladies by Jahanpa Lahiri, Indian writer, and kind of keeping with this concept of post-colonialist literature and looking at the effects of colonialism on different countries, cultures, traditions, and people, right? I'm going to be posting the actual short story collection next class. Again, so no worries there. You only need to read these 2 texts the next 3 weeks, but frankly, I think they are fantastic short stories, so you are welcome to read more than just those 2. And again, I will post those for next class. Today, we're going to actually focus on a personal essay by Jahanpa Lahiri called Trading Stories, to get a little bit of context about who this author is, get a kind of sense of how she perceives the world around her, because that's going to have an effect on how we make meaning of the text we're going to be studying, Interpretive Maladies and When Mr. Pirzada Came to Dine, okay? So, conceptual learning. Let's talk briefly about the 4 concepts that I'm going to ask you to go ahead and do a little exploration with today, right? Let's start with culture first, right? So I've given you on this slide just a kind of basic explanation of what culture is in terms of IB and also how to levitate or enhance your understanding of culture and how it applies to our text. So culture is the respective values, social practices, customs, beliefs, and attitudes of a group of people, okay? And when you are reading through Trading Stories, something that I think that would be good for taking notes, right? You're going to have a couple questions I'm going to ask you to answer for your attendance work today. But going that next step, right? Lahiri's culture is defined by, right? So then we want to start looking for some textual evidence that demonstrates what defines Lahiri's culture, right? So maybe, again, it's social practices, maybe it's values, maybe it's customs, maybe it's beliefs. And then she is going to explain how this affects the way she writes, what she writes about, who she writes about, right? How she represents people and ideas based on her cultural influences. Okay? Transformation is the experience and influences that develop and change an idea, person, or opinion over a period of time, right? So we actually did this quite a few times, right? When we're talking about Elizabeth from Pride and Prejudice, or we're talking about Bill Bryson, Walk in the Woods, transformation is very common, right? Even the practice of reading a text is transformative, right? Because we learn new things about ourselves and about the world around us, right? And so can be said about Lahiri in her personalized essay, right? So due to, right? So the experience that she has, right? Whether it's a person or an interaction, she hears a new idea, Lahiri changes because of, right? So cause and effect here. How does she change? This has an effect on her, and then we're going to ask ourselves, like, does this affect her understanding of the world, people, ideas, ideologies? Does it change her opinions, her experiences? All right. Identity. Identity is very complex. So what we're looking at here is one part of what identity is about, right? So that's why I'm only saying for this text only today, right? Don't worry about the other texts. We'll get to those another class. Identity is loosely, emphasize that word, loosely defined by the complexities of race, gender, and sexuality, right? So Lahiri and society define her identity as what, right? So you'll want to think about, who is this writer, right? I've already told you that she has some Indian cultural heritage behind her, right? So that obviously has something to do with her identity. But I also think about, her race. What is her race? What is her gender? What is her sexuality, right? Obviously, Lahiri defines her identity as one thing. That's not necessarily how society defines her identity, though, right? This isn't to complicate you or get you stressed out, but just some ideas, some things I'd like you to think about when you're responding to your questions. And just a reminder, you don't need to answer these questions, but while you're reading your text, you should start to fill in the blanks here as best as you can, okay? So Lahiri and society define her identity as blank. This is most evident because, right? So here you should try to think about, like, what are some examples of interactions that she has with other people or within society? What are some conflicts that she deals with, and how does that pertain back to her sense of identity, right? And we should look for page numbers. We should look for examples within the text itself. Lastly, perspective. The views, opinions, insights that are shaped by knowledge and experience, right? That's actually a pretty straightforward one, I think. Lahiri's views, opinions, and insights, right? So what she shares in her narrative. Let's pay attention to that when we're reading that text today. In the story are influenced by, and then again, these are probably going to be external forces, right? So it might be society, right? It might be other people. It might be ideas that are shared through society or other people. This is important to the writer because, all right, so all texts that we have read have an intent behind them, right? We've been looking at some texts using this thing called a post-colonial lens, which is making new meaning that wasn't necessarily intended by the author, and that's fine. That's actually pretty cool. Today, I just want you to look for how perspective shapes and crafts someone's perspective. So how does that important to why the writer writes in the first place? This is important as a writer because it tells us something more about herself, right? Or maybe the society that she's from, all right? So again, not here to stress you out at all with this. This is just here to kind of help you fill in the blanks here, all right? So if you have questions about this, let's Zoom today, or you can shoot me an email. That's up to you. So this brings me to the last slide in our activity for today. We're going to go into more specific examples of concepts and definitions. Again, we're going to hold off on that today. I'd like you to go ahead and just kind of map this out, these 4 examples of concepts, as best as you can. All right. And again, feel free to Zoom with me if you have questions or shoot me an email. You can click here for the Trading Stories personal essay. And here is the attendance work. And in the attendance work, you're going to find these 3 questions. All right. So how does Lahiri's culture influence the way she writes? Well, we kind of talked about that, how to set that up, at least in our last slide. How did writing transform Lahiri's own Lahiri's own character and her sense of identity? Right. And why do you think sharing her own perspective and observations are important? Right. So I'd like you to go ahead and find examples from the text to support it. Use direct quotations to help support that. And again, feel free to talk with me if you feel lost or you just kind of want to talk over the text. We can meet as a large group. That's up to you. All right. Again, happy to have you back. Welcome back from break. Hope you're feeling well rested.